we're going to look at all 12 regular season games that are on the schedule right now and rank them by importance. I want to make this clear. This is not, again, a level of difficulty or lack thereof. And this is also not which one am I most emotionally invested in as a fan. This is strictly level of importance as it relates to Iowa meeting its goals in the Big Ten. All right? Their goal, and I think all the coaches and players would admit to that every year, their goal is to win a Big Ten West title and give themselves a shot at a Big Ten title against probably Ohio State, but whoever comes out of the East. So we're going to look at all 12 games on the schedule, and again, with a view to the goals. And of course, I think you have to throw in every player wants to make the playoff. So that obviously has some implications as well. But of course, the immediate goal is to win the Big Ten West. Now, again, this is up for debate. You may not agree with my rankings. That's totally okay. If you don't agree, you're welcome to state so in the comments section. You're welcome to vehemently turn me off and never watch me again. I hope you don't, but everybody has a right to their opinion. So let's start with number one. Actually, we'll start in the backside. Let's start with the least important game, and I'm going to make a lot of people here in Ames upset right off the bat. You may call me crazy. The least important game for Iowa this year to win is the Iowa State game. Now, let me explain myself, because I think a lot of Iowa fans may say that's the most important game. I think a lot of Iowa fans, over the course of the decades of this rivalry, would at least claim that Iowa State has made this game its most important game of the season. There's sort of a animosity between the two schools. Oftentimes, Iowa fans claiming that Iowa State fans view that game as the Super Bowl in Ames, or the Cy-Hawk rivalry game being sort of like a Super Bowl for Iowa State. I don't believe that to be true. Iowa State, there's a lot of hype around the Cyclones right now, and I think a lot of it's justified. I think there's a little bit overhype, and I think we saw that with Iowa basketball as well last year. And, you know, we know how that played out. They had a very good season, but lost before they reached the Sweet 16. I'm not saying that Iowa State football will end the same way, but I think some of the hype is a little bit overdone right now. They did have a lot of guys coming back, Charlie Kolar being one guy, Brock Purdy's back. They've got guys everywhere as far as skill position talent, and certainly their offensive line. They return like everybody. It's ridiculous. So they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in the Big 12. But let me explain why this is Iowa's least important game of the season. Now, the first reason should be obvious based on what I stated earlier. This is not a Big Ten game. I know people want to make this game out to be more than it is, but this does not affect Iowa's chance at a Big Ten West title in any way. It just does not affect it. Mathematically, it does not affect it. It does not count for or against Iowa's chances. So Iowa loses 42-0. Obviously, there's going to be a psychological play into the Big Ten West title, I would think. But that's not going to happen. They're not going to get skunked. I could see them losing this game. We'll talk again more about that about this game and other games once we hit August. But this is the least important game. It doesn't affect the Big Ten West standings. Doesn't affect Iowa's chances. And let's also remember a couple more things. Even if you're looking at it from a playoff standpoint, if you think Iowa has a chance to make a playoff, every game's equally important, right? We saw in 2015 that a 12-0 regular season for Iowa was not enough to elevate them to the playoff. And if it weren't for the outstretched arm of L.J. Scott, Iowa would have made the playoff. But because of that one play, Iowa was left out. Again, I'm not saying if it's right or wrong, but that's just fact of the matter. So, as far as the college football playoff is concerned, if you're going to lose a game, right now, if you look up and down Iowa's schedule, Iowa State's the best team on the schedule. If you look purely at what they have returning, experience, and if you want to talk about preseason rankings, and of course we haven't had the Associated Press has not released its AP poll, preseason AP poll, I don't believe, but we've got a lot of writers, a lot of the media jumping on the bandwagon. And again, I think some of it's rightfully so. But I think Iowa State, if you look up and down the schedule, is the toughest game on the schedule right now. It's also in Ames. All right? So, those two things play into it. And the third reason why it's the least important game in my mind is that it's so early in the season. We understand that it's not as stark as what we see from the NCAA Tournament Committee, but oftentimes games that are won or lost, usually lost early in the season for a contender for the playoff or for the NCAA Tournament, usually those early games that are lost, I don't want to say they have an asterisk next to them, but they carry less importance than a late loss in the season. For instance, if Iowa were to lose to Wisconsin, we'll get to that game in a little bit, but that game's in late October. You lose that game, another tough one on the road, you're probably not going to be received so friendly or so well from the College Football Playoff Committee. That's just how it is, and again, like it or not. So, again, I know that people are going to disagree with this because it's the Cy-Hawk game. I get it. And maybe just that trophy. I mean, I know we're not talking about trophies. Of all 4 trophies, if there's one trophy I'd rather have, it'd probably be the Cy-Hawk trophy, just from an emotional fan's perspective, but from a invested and trying to be a logical fan, a heady fan, so to speak, I'm going to pick that as my least important game. Moving on to the second to least important game, and that is September 25th against Colorado State. Now, obviously, you lose to Colorado State, you ain't making the playoff. So that game was not going to, Iowa State was not going to trump Colorado State in importance. But, again, I know it would be deflating. It would be extremely deflating to lose that game. It would kill them in the rankings. It would kill them in the college football playoff as far as their chances there. But so would a lot of these games in the schedule. You don't want to lose that game. There's no question about it. You're at home. But I still say that's the second least important game on the schedule. So that probably leads into my 10th most important game on the schedule, or third least important, and that is against Kent State. Let's remember, Kent State was a bowl team last year. They're a MAC team, I get it. You don't want to lose this game. But this was a good team last year. Could be a sleeper game, too, because Iowa State will be coming off Indiana, Iowa State to start the season. If Iowa's not careful, you could get caught up in the moment and lose this game. Thankfully, they don't have a big-time opponent coming after Kent State. They get Colorado State. So their focus should be one game at a time at this point. Let's hope they're not 2-0, or 0-2 at that point. And certainly if they're 0-2, they'll be focused on Kent State. Looking at the 9th most important game, this may surprise some people because it's a West showdown, and that is home against Illinois. Now, why is this so far down my ladder of importance? Illinois is not a contender. You hate to lose West games, or any Big Ten games for that matter, but especially West games when they're against a contending team, because it's a double whammy. You win, and it hurts the team you're competing against as far as the standings, and it helps yourself. Same thing if you lose. It certainly hurts you both ways. It helps the other team, hurts you, and certainly not only that, as far as the numbers are concerned, but the tiebreaker would then go, the head-to-head tiebreaker would go to the winning team in those games. But I don't expect Brett Bielema to be able to elevate that program this year. I have faith in Brett. I do think Brett will be able to, and we talked about this yesterday with Mark Rogers, I think Illinois has got a chance to be a really good football program in 2 to 3 years. I'm not saying they're going to be a national contender or a sleeping giant, or they are a sleeping giant. I'm not inferring that, but I do think this team can be a contending team in the West. Not saying they're going to win it, maybe ever under Brett, who knows. But I think that they will make some noise in this division when all is said and done. But I don't think that's this year. Lovie Smith just never really got it done. There were good moments, flashes of brilliance a couple of years ago with a win against Wisconsin in a solid season. But I think he's got a lot. Brett Billingham's got a lot of rebuilding to do there in Champaign. This is a game in Iowa City, and it will be Senior Day, I believe. I don't have that in front of me, but it is the last home game of the season, so I'm assuming, barring some conflict or for some reason they would bump up Senior Day, that will be Senior Day for Iowa. And boy, Brett would, you know, Brett Bielema would love to steal one on November 20th in Kinnick, but I still rank that as my 9th most important game of the season. How about number 8? Iowa at Maryland, October 1st. Now again, why? A couple things. Right in the middle kind of our rankings, Maryland is a team last year, and we're going to continue to see this. Maryland's not going to be able to work its way out of the bottom half of the Big Ten, the East Division. The East is too strong. Even with Penn State taking a step back last year, Michigan struggling still. They're still Penn State and Michigan. The culture in those programs is so far ahead of Maryland right now. We've seen Maryland, again, sort of like we've seen with Illinois in the last couple of seasons, have moments of brilliance, have games where it looks like they're a different team. We even saw Maryland a year or two ago work its way into the top 25 momentarily and then kind of a collapse. But here's why this game kind of scares me. A couple things. It's on the road. Obviously, Iowa hasn't been to College Park for a football game in a while. And then also, it's a Friday night game. Not saying that that's going to make a huge difference. They do get Colorado State the week before. So if you're going to have a short prep week, I'd rather that short prep week be after playing a team like Colorado State as opposed to an Iowa State or an Indiana. So that's a good thing. But it's also a night game. So I would expect if the College Park crowd's going to show up at all this season, I would expect them to show up for that game. I don't know how avid people out in Maryland are in the D.C. area for high school football. I'm assuming there's probably a lot of avid supporters of high school ball. And I know that the whole Friday night games thing has been kind of a point of contention with a lot of people. But I would expect a good turnout there. Let's remember, I think there's going to be good turnouts everywhere as long as COVID maintains a level of, I don't want to say non-existence because it is certainly here. And the numbers have actually gone back up here recently. I think we're still sitting at just under 70% for the country as far as having at least one dose of the vaccine. That number needs to go up. That's a time for a different discussion. I think there'll be big crowds almost everywhere. If you don't have a big crowd this year, you're probably never going to have one. I mean, you've got a problem because I think fans are exceptionally stir-crazy, and most people are understanding now to the fact that if you're trying to deal with COVID and you're outside, not saying you're immune to the virus, but certainly your chances of staying healthy are much, much better. So I think there'll be a lot of fans everywhere, including on October 1st at Maryland, and that's Iowa's, again, first Friday trip to Maryland. They get to play Tua Tagovailoa's little brother, so should be a good one. Again, just the second Big Ten game of the season, and it's interesting, Iowa's first 3 Big Ten games are against East opponents, so what is that, the last 6 games of the season will be against the Big Ten West. So, again, tough game, could be an upset alert game, but I still rank it as my 8th most important game on the Iowa schedule. Looking at number 7, Iowa at Nebraska. Right smack dab in the middle of our rankings for levels of importance as far as Iowa's schedule. Again, talked with Mark Rogers about this. I don't see, he's a little bit higher on Nebraska than I am. I do not see Nebraska taking a step to a point where they're going to be a contending team in the West. They need to prove that they can actually make a bowl game before I'm going to even give them consideration for being in the West race. Even if it's not Iowa, to think that Nebraska is suddenly going to take charge and somehow beat out the likes of Iowa, Wisconsin, even Northwestern, I think is a farce. So that's still an important game because I have more faith probably in, that's crazy to think, but I probably have more faith in Frost because of some of the recruiting wins that they've been able to have over there more than Brett Bielema at this point. So I would still rank it ahead of that game, and it's also a West game. So there's that, and of course it is on the road, and it is a rivalry game. It is a trophy game. But again, these rankings largely are not based on trophy games. That's why we ranked Iowa State so low on the level or the totem pole of importance, so to speak.